They say money reveals who you really are. If that's true, then $50,000 revealed everything about me on the worst day of my life. The hospital bill sat folded in my purse like a countdown clock. I had read it 3 times during my lunch break, and somehow the number never got smaller. $23,000. That was the amount needed before Noah's next procedure could be scheduled. $23,000 I didn't have. $23,000 standing between my 8-year-old son and the care he needed. The fluorescent lights above Register 7 buzzed softly as I scanned groceries for customers who barely looked at me. Outside, a cold November rain painted the parking lot silver. Inside, my smile felt as worn out as my sneakers. By the end of my shift, my feet ached, my head throbbed, and all I wanted was to get home to Noah. He would be waiting with his science homework spread across the kitchen table, pretending not to worry whenever I talked to doctors. Noah always smiled for me, even when he was scared, especially when he was scared. I grabbed my jacket, clocked out, and stepped into the evening drizzle. The wind cut through the thin fabric immediately. My old sedan sat near the far edge of the employee parking lot beneath a flickering light. Halfway there, something caught my eye. A large brown envelope lying beside a concrete divider. At first, I thought it was trash. Then I noticed how thick it was. Curiosity made me bend down. The envelope felt heavy in my hands. My stomach tightened. I opened the flap just enough to look inside. Cash. Stacks of $100 bills. Perfectly banded. My breath stopped. I looked around instinctively. The parking lot was nearly empty. A few cars. Rain. Headlights in the distance. No one seemed to be searching for anything. My hands began to tremble. I counted quickly. $50,000. More money than I had ever held in my entire life. For a moment, the world went silent. No hospital bills. No overdue rent notice sitting on my kitchen counter. No choosing between groceries and prescriptions. No fear every time Noah coughed or looked tired after school. One envelope could change everything. I closed my eyes. God knew I needed that money. God knew how badly I wanted to keep it. Then Noah's face appeared in my mind. Not the smiling version. The version that watched me when he thought I wasn't looking. The little boy who learned too young that life wasn't always fair. The little boy who copied everything I did. Slowly. I opened my eyes and let out a shaky breath. If I kept this money, what would I teach him? The answer hurt because I already knew it. I turned around and walked back toward the store manager's office with the envelope pressed tightly against my chest. What I didn't know was that across the street, inside a black SUV parked beneath the rain, a man was watching every step I took. I did not see the man in the SUV that night. I did not hear the quiet conversation that followed after I handed the envelope to the store manager. I only knew that when I finally drove home through the rain, my hands still felt strange on the steering wheel, as if they were holding on to a decision that had cost me something. The streets of Queens blurred beneath the yellow glow of streetlights. Windshield wipers swept back and forth in a steady rhythm. Back and forth. Back and forth, like they were trying to erase the thoughts running through my head. $50,000. The number refused to leave me alone. By the time I reached our apartment building, the rain had become a cold mist drifting between the brick buildings. I parked beside the curb and looked up at the third-floor window where a small lamp still glowed. Noah was awake, waiting for me, like always. The moment I opened the apartment door, I heard his footsteps. Fast. Excited. Familiar. He wrapped his arms around my waist before I could even set down my purse. Mom, I got an A on my science project. His smile hit me harder than anything else that day. You did. I laughed and kissed the top of his head. That is amazing. For a few minutes, the hospital bills disappeared, the overdue notices disappeared, everything disappeared except my son talking about planets and volcanoes while eating a grilled cheese sandwich at our tiny kitchen table. Later that night, after Noah fell asleep, reality returned. I sat alone beneath the weak glow of the kitchen light, sorting through envelopes, rent, utilities, medical expenses, numbers, deadlines, warnings. The stack felt endless. I rubbed my eyes and stared at the hospital estimate again. $23,000. My chest tightened. Somewhere out there, $50,000 had found its way back to its owner. Meanwhile, I was calculating whether I could afford gas next week. I laughed softly at the irony. Then I folded the paper and pushed it away. Some choices were not supposed to be easy. Across the city, another person was having trouble forgetting that same envelope. Damian Russo stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office overlooking Manhattan. Rain streaked across the glass. The city lights glittered beneath the storm like scattered diamonds. A thick file rested on his desk. One page sat open at the top. Sarah Bennett, 31 years old, single mother, 2 jobs, no criminal record, no debt beyond medical bills and ordinary expenses. Damian read the page twice, then a third time. The numbers did not make sense. Most people would have taken the money. Many people would have convinced themselves they deserved it. Yet somehow the woman who needed it most had returned every dollar. Damian closed the file slowly. For the first time in a very long time, curiosity felt stronger than business, stronger than routine, stronger than reason. And the next morning, before I even woke up, someone had already begun watching my world from a distance. The next few days felt exactly the same on the surface. I woke up before sunrise, made Noah breakfast, packed his lunch, worked my shift, answered bills I could not pay, and ignored the ones I could not even think about. But sometimes life changes quietly before you notice it. Sometimes someone begins stepping into your story long before you see them. Noah was finishing his cereal one morning when he looked up from the kitchen table and smiled. "Mom, when my heart gets better, can we go to California?" The question caught me off guard. "California." He nodded enthusiastically. "I want to see the ocean, the real ocean, not just pictures." I smiled despite the knot in my chest. "That sounds pretty amazing." "Promise." Children always ask for promises at the worst possible moments. I looked at his hopeful face and forced myself to smile wider. "Promise." After dropping him at school, I sat in my car for several minutes before starting the engine, because promises cost money. And money was the one thing I never seemed to have enough of. Across the city, Damian Russo sat in the back of a black SUV reading another report. He had expected to lose interest by now. Instead, every new detail raised more questions. Sarah Bennett, 31, no criminal record, no complaints from employers, no history of fraud, no hidden bank accounts, no secrets, just a woman carrying more weight than most people could survive. "Anything unusual?" Damian asked. His driver glanced into the rearview mirror. "Only the boy." Damian looked up. "What about him?" "Medical condition. Frequent hospital visits. Expensive treatment." The file remained open in Damian's lap. A photograph paperclipped to the corner showed Noah leaving school. The image was ordinary. Backpack, sneakers, a crooked smile. Yet something about it made Damian stare longer than he intended. Those eyes, green, bright despite everything. Familiar, The feeling irritated him because he could not explain it. Meanwhile, I was standing in line at a pharmacy trying to stretch $42 across 3 prescriptions. The cashier gave me an apologetic smile after checking the total. "I'm sorry. Your insurance only covered part of it." I swallowed hard. Which one is the most important? The question felt impossible the moment it left my mouth, because they were all important. A few minutes later, I walked out carrying only one medication and a growing sense of failure. The cold wind cut through my jacket as I crossed the parking lot. I did not notice the black SUV parked 2 rows away. I did not notice the man watching from behind tinted glass. But Damien noticed everything. He watched me count the cash in my wallet twice before getting into my car. He watched the disappointment I tried to hide, and for reasons he still did not understand, it bothered him far more than it should have. Then Noah appeared outside the school later that afternoon, laughing at something another child said. Damien froze. For a brief second, a memory surfaced. A different smile, a different pair of green eyes, someone he had lost years ago. The feeling vanished almost immediately, but not before leaving behind a question he could not ignore. And for the first time, the boy interested him even more than the woman. The first sign that something strange was happening arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I found it taped to my apartment door when I came home from work. A plain white envelope with no name and no return address. My stomach tightened immediately. For a second, I thought it was another bill, another reminder that I was falling behind, another warning I could not afford to read. But when I opened it, I found a receipt instead. Paid in full. I stared at the paper. Then I checked the account number. Then I checked it again. It belonged to the electric company. 3 months overdue, completely paid. My heart began to race. There had to be a mistake. I rushed inside and called customer service while Noah sat at the kitchen table coloring dinosaurs. After 20 minutes on hold, the representative confirmed it. The balance was gone. Every dollar. Who paid it? I asked. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We cannot release that information." The call ended. But the confusion remained. That night I barely slept. The next morning, another surprise appeared. A pharmacy notification informed me that one of Noah's prescriptions was ready for pickup. Fully covered. No payment required. I stood in the parking lot reading the message 3 times. The cold December wind whipped around me, but I barely felt it. Something was happening. Someone was helping us. I just did not know who. Across the city, Damien sat in silence as another report landed on his desk. The utility bill has been handled," one of his associates said. Damien nodded once. "And this medication taken care of?" The associate hesitated. "Sir, may I ask why?" Damien looked out the window toward the skyline. Clouds hung low over Manhattan. The city looked gray and distant. No. The answer ended the conversation immediately. Even Damien was not entirely sure why he kept doing it. Every logical part of him understood he should move on. Yet every time he tried, he remembered Sarah standing in that parking lot holding $50,000 she desperately needed. He remembered her returning it without hesitation. And then there was Noah. The boy lingered in his thoughts in ways he could not explain. Later that afternoon, I picked Noah up from school. He climbed into the passenger seat with a grin so wide it almost erased my worries. "Mom, guess what?" "What, the field trip is back on?" I laughed. "That is great." "And Mrs. Parker said somebody donated money so everyone could go." I smiled automatically. Then the smile faded. Another coincidence. Another unexpected gift. Noah kept talking, but my mind drifted elsewhere. Because for the first time, I no longer believed in coincidences. Somewhere out there, someone was quietly changing our lives. And as I drove home beneath the fading winter sunlight, I could not shake the feeling that whoever they were, they already knew far more about me than I knew about them. 3 days later, I finally decided I was tired of feeling grateful and confused at the same time. Whoever had been helping us clearly knew things they should not know. They knew where I lived. They knew about Noah's medication. They knew about bills I had never told anyone about. The thought should have comforted me. Instead, it kept me awake at night. On Friday evening, the sky hung low and gray over Queens as I finished my shift and picked Noah up from school. He spent the entire drive home talking about a model rocket he wanted to build. I listened, smiling at the right moments, but my attention kept drifting. Something felt different. The feeling stayed with me all the way up the stairs to our apartment. Then I saw it. A small cardboard box sitting outside my door. My heart immediately began to pound. Noah looked at it first. "Mom, did somebody send us a package?" I carefully picked it up and brought it inside. There was no shipping label, no company logo, no sender name, just a plain box. Noah watched with wide eyes as I opened it. Inside was a brand new science kit, the exact one he had circled in a store catalog 2 months earlier. Underneath it sat a simple note. For the future engineer. No signature, no explanation. Noah's face lit up brighter than Christmas morning. "Mom, look." He practically bounced across the room holding the box against his chest. "This is the one I wanted." I forced a smile, but my chest tightened. Whoever was doing this knew too much. That night, after Noah fell asleep, I stood by the apartment window staring down at the street. Rain tapped softly against the glass. Cars rolled past beneath the glow of streetlights. Then I saw it. A black SUV parked across the street. It might have meant nothing. It probably meant nothing. Yet something made me keep watching. The vehicle remained there for nearly 20 minutes before finally pulling away. Across the city, Damien sat alone in the rear seat as the SUV moved through Manhattan traffic. He stared at a photograph lying on the seat beside him. Noah smiling outside school. Green eyes. The same impossible shade he remembered from another life. Another time. A memory he had spent years trying to bury. His phone rang. He ignored it. The city lights reflected across the window as he closed his eyes. He had intended to help quietly and walk away. That had been the plan from the beginning. Yet every day made leaving harder. Every new detail pulled him deeper into a story that was never supposed to belong to him. Back in Queens, I finally stepped away from the window and headed toward bed. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself there was no connection between the mysterious gifts and the SUV outside. But just before midnight, my phone vibrated on the nightstand. An unknown number. One new text message. Only 4 words. "Check on Noah tomorrow." I sat upright instantly. My blood ran cold. Because whoever sent it already knew exactly who mattered most to me. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the message again. "Check on Noah tomorrow." 4 simple words. No explanation, no name, no reason. By 6 in the morning, I was already sitting at the edge of my bed staring at my phone. Noah shuffled into the kitchen an hour later, wearing mismatched socks and rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Why are you up so early?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Could not sleep." He poured cereal into a bowl and immediately started talking about his science kit. I tried to focus on his excitement, but a knot of unease sat heavy in my chest. The entire drive to school felt wrong. The sky was gray. The air felt colder than usual. Even Noah noticed my silence. Mom. Yeah. Everything okay? I glanced at him and smiled. Everything is fine. It was a lie. Mothers become experts at those. After dropping him off, I spent the morning at work checking my phone every 15 minutes. Noon came, then 1 o'clock. Nothing happened. No calls, no emergencies, no explanations. I started convincing myself the message had been a cruel prank. Then my phone rang. The number belonged to Noah's school nurse. My heart nearly stopped. Is he okay? I asked before she could speak. He is fine, she replied quickly. Please do not worry. Noah felt dizzy during recess. We checked him immediately. His vitals are stable, but we thought you should know. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. Relief hit so hard my knees felt weak. Thank you. We would like him evaluated by his cardiologist as a precaution. The call ended a minute later. I sat in my car behind the grocery store, staring at the steering wheel. The message had not been random. Somehow, someone had known. Across Manhattan. Damien listened quietly as one of his associates finished speaking. The nurse made the call exactly as requested. Damien nodded once. He felt no satisfaction. Only relief. The physician monitoring Noah's condition had mentioned possible symptoms earlier that week. Nothing dangerous. Nothing urgent. But Damien had not wanted to take chances. Not with the boy. Never with the boy. Later that afternoon, I arrived at the cardiology clinic with Noah beside me. The waiting room smelled like coffee and disinfectant. Families filled most of the chairs. Some looked hopeful. Others looked exhausted. I recognized both expressions. We waited nearly an hour before a nurse called Noah's name. As we stood to follow her, someone held the door open. A tall man in a dark overcoat. Dark hair, sharp features, green eyes that seemed strangely familiar. For a brief second, our gazes met. Something shifted in his expression. Then it disappeared. After you, he said quietly. I thanked him and walked past. Neither of us spoke again. But as I followed Noah down the hallway, I could not shake the feeling that I had just met the man who had been standing in the shadows of my life all along. The appointment should have been routine. That was what I kept telling myself while Noah sat beside me, swinging his legs beneath the examination table. The doctor reviewed charts, asked questions, listened to Noah's heart. Everything seemed normal. Then he smiled. No major concerns today. We will keep monitoring him, but overall I am happy with what I am seeing. Relief washed through me so quickly it almost hurt. Noah grinned. See, Mom, I told you I was okay. I laughed softly and brushed his hair back. You were right. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. We left the clinic just before sunset. Winter light stretched across the sidewalks in long golden lines. Noah walked beside me carrying his backpack and talking about the model rocket he wanted to build over the weekend. Then his voice stopped. I looked down. He was staring across the street. That is the man from earlier, he said. My stomach tightened. Across the intersection stood the same man who had held the clinic door open. Tall, dark overcoat, green eyes. He was speaking with someone beside a black SUV. For a brief second, his gaze lifted and met mine again. The city noise seemed to fade around us. Cars moved. People crossed the street. Yet somehow everything felt still. Then the light changed. The moment disappeared. He stepped into the vehicle and drove it away. Do you know him? Noah asked. No. The answer came too quickly, because the truth was, I was no longer sure. That night, after Noah fell asleep, I found myself thinking about those eyes, not because they were intimidating, not because they were mysterious, because they looked familiar in a way I could not explain. Meanwhile, several miles away, Damien stood alone in a private study lined with dark wood shelves. An old photograph rested in his hand. The edges had faded over time. The image showed a young woman standing beside a playground almost 20 years earlier. She was smiling, her eyes bright, green, identical to Noah's. Damien stared at the picture for a long moment before turning it over. Written on the back was a date and a name, Emily Hart, the woman he had once promised never to forget. A woman who had changed his life with a single act of kindness when they were both children. Earlier that afternoon, one of his investigators had uncovered something unexpected. Sarah Bennett had known Emily years ago. Not well, not recently, but their lives had crossed in a way neither woman probably remembered. The discovery felt impossible. Coincidence layered upon coincidence until it no longer felt like coincidence at all. Damien placed the photograph back into the drawer and closed it carefully. For years he had believed certain stories ended forever. Now he was beginning to wonder if some stories simply found a different way to continue. The following week arrived with an uneasy calm that felt almost too perfect. Noah was healthy. The bills had stopped piling up quite so quickly. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to believe life might actually be getting easier. That belief lasted until Tuesday afternoon. I arrived at Noah's school 10 minutes early and found the front office unusually busy. Parents moved through the lobby. Teachers hurried between classrooms. Nothing seemed wrong until I reached the attendance desk. "I am here for Noah Bennett," I said. The receptionist looked confused. His uncle already signed him out. Every sound around me disappeared. "What uncle?" She frowned. "The gentleman who picked him up about 20 minutes ago." My heart dropped. Noah does not have an uncle. The color drained from her face. Within seconds she was checking paperwork, calling names, asking questions. I barely heard any of it. My hands shook so badly I could not hold my phone steady. Then it rang. An unknown number. I answered immediately. "Where is my son?" Silence filled the line for a moment. Then a calm male voice spoke. "Your son is safe." Safe. The word should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me. "Who is this?" I demanded. The line disconnected. I stood frozen in the middle of the office. Around me, staff members were making calls and trying to understand what had happened. Across Manhattan, Damien received a call of his own. He listened without interrupting. His expression hardened with every passing second. When the call ended, he stood immediately. For months he had watched from a distance, protected from the shadows, refused to become directly involved. That decision ended right then. Less than an hour later, I sat trembling inside a small conference room at the school when the door opened. The man from the clinic stepped inside. The same dark coat, the same green eyes, the same impossible feeling of familiarity. He looked directly at me. "Sarah." Hearing my name from his mouth felt strange. Personal. "Who are you?" I asked. "My name is Damien Russo." "Do you know where my son is?" The question came out sharper than I intended. Damien held my gaze. "Yes." My breath caught. "Then tell me." For the first time since I had met him, something vulnerable crossed his face. Not fear, not uncertainty. Regret. "I will bring him back to you." The certainty in his voice stopped me cold. Not because it sounded arrogant, because it sounded like a promise. 20 minutes later, another call came into the school office. A misunderstanding. An administrative error involving a family acquaintance authorized months earlier on outdated paperwork. Noah had been located immediately and was completely safe. Relief hit me so hard, tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. When I looked back toward Damien, he was already walking away, but just before he reached the door, he turned. "I told you he would be safe." Then he disappeared into the hallway, leaving me with one overwhelming realization. The stranger who had been watching my life from the shadows was finally stepping into it. 2 days later, I finally asked the question that had been following me for weeks. The question that had been sitting quietly in the back of my mind every time a bill disappeared, every time a problem solved itself, every time Damien Russo appeared exactly when I needed answers. I found him standing alone outside a small cafe overlooking the East River. Winter sunlight reflected off the water in pale silver waves. The wind tugged at my coat as I approached. He turned before I said a word, as though he already knew I was there. "Was it you?" I asked. No greeting, no small talk, just the truth. His green eyes held mine for several seconds. Then he nodded. Most of it. I should have been angry. Part of me wanted to be. Yet standing there, looking at the man who had quietly carried burdens he did not owe me, anger felt impossible. "Why?" My voice came out softer than I intended. Damien glanced toward the river. "Because years ago someone taught me that kindness matters." The answer sounded incomplete, like only part of a much larger story. He reached into his and pulled out a thick, brown envelope. The sight of it instantly brought me back to that rainy night in the parking lot. He held it out. I stared at it without moving. "What is this?" "Take it." Slowly. I accepted the envelope. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside sat the same amount that had changed everything. $50,000. My breath caught. "Damien, listen to me." His voice remained calm, steady. "The night you found that money, you needed it more than anyone else. You could have taken it. No one would have blamed you. No one would have known." I looked down at the envelope. Tears blurred the edges of my vision. "But you returned it anyway," he continued. "You chose who you were over what you needed. That is rare." For a moment neither of us spoke. The city moved around us. Traffic, wind, distant voices, yet everything felt strangely quiet. "I cannot accept this," I whispered. Damien smiled for the first time since I had met him. Not the controlled smile of a powerful man. A real one. Warm. Human. "You already earned it." Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. Not because of the money. Not because of the bills or the hospital costs or the endless nights spent worrying about Noah. Because for the first time in years, someone had seen how hard I was trying. Someone had noticed. Behind me, Noah's voice suddenly rang out across the sidewalk. "Mom!" I turned and saw him running toward us, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. He reached us and immediately grabbed my hand. Then he looked up at Damien. "Are you coming with us?" The question made me laugh through my tears. Damien looked at Noah, then at me. "If that is okay with your mother." Noah grinned. I smiled, and standing there beside the river, with winter sunlight dancing across the water and hope finally feeling real again, I realized something unexpected. The $50,000 had never been the miracle. The miracle was that one honest decision had brought the right people into each other's lives. Sometimes kindness comes back. Not all at once. Not when you expect it. But when it does, it can change everything.